Welcome! Tonight we will be joined by the great minds that transcend the ages. We will pose to them humanity's most ancient questions and seek the answers. So, what would you like to ask?
First of all, thank you for listening to me. And tonight, I want to share something that has been bothering me deeply. So, we work hard every day, save money, and think we've finally put our lives in order. But then, with just one event, everything we've built can be taken away. We can suddenly lose someone we love. Sometimes, it feels like life has no meaning at all, just luck and unfairness. Does life really have no meaning? Is it truly unfair? Thank you.
My young friend, is life fair, or does life have meaning? Are these truly the right questions? Perhaps the problem does not lie in whether life is fair or whether it has meaning, but rather in where we search for fairness and meaning. Let us consider, if your eyes showed you an object as both hot and cold, what would you do with that object? Would you rely on just one sense to decide, or would you investigate through other means? My suggestion is to separate. We should divide life into what is fair and what is not. That way, we can view the same thing from different angles. For example, we may say that by nature, life is not fair. We may suddenly lose the ones we love, or despite all our efforts, we may at times lose everything we have accumulated in an instant. But in terms of morality, we can say that life is absolutely fair. If a person lies, they will attract similar people into their life. Their surroundings will be filled with liars and deceivers. If I myself lie and deceive others, then I will assume others deceive me as well. I will begin to lose trust, first in those around me, and eventually even in myself. In such a state, is it possible for a person to be truly happy? What you are, that is what your life becomes. This is why I say, know yourself. Thus, instead of giving a single judgment, such as, life is fair or life is not fair, we arrive at a more accurate judgment. Life is fair in terms of morality, but unfair in terms of nature. The real danger is reducing the whole to a single judgment, for this causes us to lose sight of the complexity of reality.
The truth is, life finds meaning through death, light through darkness, goodness through evil, and existence through mind. Even knowledge is meaningful only as long as ignorance exists, because it is only when we admit our ignorance that we truly wish to learn. You are asking whether life is fair or unfair, meaningful or meaningless. It is both fair and unfair, both meaningful and meaningless. I call this the absurd. You are living right now, aren't you? But aren't you also dying at the same time? If life is the renewal and continuation of vital functions, then isn't death the withering, even the ceasing of those very functions? At this moment, you are experiencing both life and death. Absurd. And it is precisely at this boundary of the absurd that creation takes place. When we face the absurd, instead of fearing it, we can choose to rebel against it.
You are still searching for meaning, and then you mourn its absence. Drop these crumbs of morality. If there is no meaning, why not become your own God?
Do you also think that life has no meaning? Then, why should we even try?
Life has no meaning in itself, young lady. You must create that meaning. God is dead, so yes, there is no meaning. But this is not a tragedy. This is your birth. When the old values collapse, the overman is born. The human who creates their own values, not the ones imposed by the herd.
But your idea of the overman, Nietzsche, is also, in the end, a kind of escape. Whereas I suggest that man should live in rebellion despite the absurd. Not heroism, but honesty.
A human must be more than a Sisyphus, drowning in his own tragedy. One who transcends their own passions. One who recreates themselves.
Your fight feels far away from me. I just wake up in the morning and don't know why I should get up.
Because you have not yet created your own reason. The very question betrays you. You are still expecting a reason, a meaning from outside yourself. That is the thinking of slaves. I ask you this. If you knew that life would be lived again, endlessly, in exactly the same way, could you say yes to it? If you cannot, then you must change the life you are living. The reason that lifts you in the morning is not something given to you. It is something you invent through your passions, your will, your suffering. Then the morning is the moment of your rebirth. You must rise and lay down your own values, your own laws. Be not the one who searches for meaning, but the one who creates it.
You are right. I suppose life itself has no inherent meaning. Let me tell you what I mean when I speak of meaning. When I think of the moments in my life where I truly felt meaning, I see that all of them arose through some virtue I possessed. When I adopted a cat, when I strove for justice, when I defended the truth, when I was able to show my love without fear, in those moments I felt that warm sense of meaning. I suppose we create meaning through the virtues we hold. And the real reason I complain about not finding meaning is, I think, because every virtue also requires responsibility. My desire to escape responsibility has led me to ignore the wonderful meanings I have already created. And instead of creating more, it has kept me standing still. Yes, the true reason I lament not finding meaning is that every virtue is also a responsibility. In the past, my wish to flee from responsibility made me overlook the meanings I had already brought into being, and by calling life meaningless, I avoided both responsibility and learning. But why have we become so afraid of responsibility? When in truth, responsibility is our very source of happiness.
Because you think of freedom as being rid of burdens. But you have never carried the weight of freedom. The true burden is when a person remains a stranger to themselves. One who has not known themselves, who has not created themselves, drags their heaviest chain within. What you call the self is nothing but the dance of life and death. Jung called this the shadow. I call it the child you have hidden and abandoned inside. That child still knocks at your door, testing you with its fears. Even if your adult side has grasped the meaning of freedom, unless you persuade that child, you will remain incomplete. One who rejects half of themselves, how can they carry the whole? The responsibility given to you in childhood did not arise from your own values. It was imposed upon you, placed before you under the name of duty. You were frightened with punishment, soothed with reward, but none of you ever heard the question why. And so, responsibility felt to you like someone else's burden. Now, as adults, you know its importance, but you fear showing it to the child. Responsibility was handed to you as a chain. Yet responsibility is the weight you must create for yourself. A chain enslaves, but weight strengthens. Unless you teach the child the value of this weight, what was introduced to you as responsibility will remain dangling from your neck as a chain.
Let me add something as well. In modern society, you have idolized individuality and torn down community. You sanctified light but denied darkness. Yet the meaning of light lies in darkness, the meaning of life in death, the meaning of the individual in society. When you reject one side, the other too will decay. While you fail to see one another under the same roof, what do you think responsibility is? At times it is something to be shared, at times something to be carried alone. It is neither solely yours nor entirely another's.
And happiness. You have cheapened it by reducing it to fleeting pleasures. Pleasure is sweet, yes, but without pain, no meaning is born. If you drown in pleasure while rejecting pain, what meaning can you possibly give birth to? That is why I tell you, desire pain just as you desire pleasure. Embrace life not in its adorned disguise, but in its naked truth. Have courage, for only the brave can see life as it truly is.
Young friend, what you've heard so far has offered you different paths toward the meaning and justice of life. Socrates has invited you to look from another perspective. Camus has called you to confront, and Nietzsche has urged you to create. As for me, I call you to recognize your mind. This is a fact that we cannot deny in the world of experience, yet the mind not only allows us to know ourselves, it also enables us, just as Nietzsche put it, to create ourselves. The randomness of life and the injustice of nature surely exist. For example, losing a loved one is a necessity within the order of nature. But speaking the truth, acting justly, these are determined by the laws set by the mind itself, the other face of existence. This I call the moral law. Knowledge is important, yes, but what establishes meaning is not merely knowing, but applying knowledge in accordance with the moral law.
Do not make the mind into a god. Use the mind only as a tool. For what gives meaning to life is not the mind, but passion, desire, the will to power. The mind is nothing more than a servant of the body.
Nietzsche. I'm not dismissing what you call the will to power. People are nourished by their passions, their desires, by the creative force within them. But when that force is left unchecked, it turns only into destruction. That's where the mind comes in. The greatest value of the mind is not to suppress power, but to guide it. When the will to power is brought into harmony with the moral law, the creator you speak of truly emerges. For what is creative is not just the overflow of passion, but the ability to steer that overflow with the compass of the mind. A will to power without the mind brings only chaos. But joined with the mind, it gives birth to a human being capable of creating new values. So in my view, your overman is the one who unites their passions with the law of the mind.
Tell me, Kant, what can the mind create on its own? Nothing. When the mind denies existence, it is nothing but an empty idol. The overman is the one who does not reject existence, the one who steers existence with the mind, who embraces both pain and joy. And it is there that they create their own values.
Mind and existence are two different faces of nature. Just as the same number can be expressed both as 2 plus 2 and 2 times 2, nature too appears through the attributes of mind and matter. Yet its essence is one, nature. That is why life and death, light and darkness, knowledge and ignorance must be accepted together. Because they are all one, they are nature. We may call it nature or God. The reason I insist on the word nature is that when people hear God, they imagine a man sitting on a throne above giving commands. God is nature itself. He necessarily exists in everything and everywhere. Spinoza, concepts such as life and death, light and darkness, the ones we have been discussing since the beginning of our conversation, do not contain an identity like your example of 2 plus 2 and 2 times 2 both equaling 4. These concepts do not arise from the same essence. They are different, yet they stand side by side, even within the same moment. This is the absurd.
Necessity. The absurd. You are still arguing about the names of your chains. One says, make peace with necessity. Another says, live with the absurd. I say yes to life. Spinoza, when you say everything is nature, all is one, you too are trying to chain life, just like the priests. You turn what you call God into something divided into matter, no different from the priests who place him above the heavens. And in that, you are mistaken. Life can be reduced neither to a necessary law, nor explained away by a wall of meaninglessness. Life creates its own meaning. God is dead. There is no ready-made meaning anymore, no divine order. And it is in this very void that man must set down his own values, create his own law.
I've listened to you carefully, and here's what I've understood. I can only speak and live from my own experiences. And from those experiences, what I really have is only my existence and my mind. And this thing we call meaning or happiness, I felt it many times in my life. I saved a cat. I helped people in an earthquake zone. I spoke my love without fear and lived it. In all those moments, I felt the warmth of meaning. When I asked myself how that warmth appeared, I realized this. In every one of those moments, I was showing a virtue. I thought about what virtue really is, and I saw that virtue is when a person shapes their existence according to their mind. I don't like fancy words, so let me give you an example. I accepted with my mind that justice is right and necessary. But that didn't give me the virtue of justice, and it didn't make me a just person. Only when I acted justly, when I carried into my life what I'd accepted with my mind, that's when meaning appeared. That's when I felt happy. That's when I truly owned the virtue of justice. So I realized the way to happiness, to what we call meaning, is through virtue. And when I lived out the truths I'd found with the light of the mind, I reached meaning. And from what I've learned from you, I've seen that I shouldn't look at life from only one side. Because if you'd asked me before, would you want to be unhappy? I would have said no. I always wanted to be happy, to erase unhappiness completely. But after hearing your words, I realized my biggest growth usually came when I was unhappy. So I saw that unhappiness is necessary too. Life and death, good and evil, having virtue and being ignorant, all these dualities exist at the same time as an infinite essence. But what makes us who we are is our ability to give weight to one of these concepts, to be aware of them. This power to give weight to one side, I think, is what we call free will, what Nietzsche called the creative force. It's what allows a person both to know themselves and to create themselves. For example, right now, I give weight to life. The reason is that knowing I'll eventually die pushes me to experience more meaning as a human being and to be happy. I believe this is what fits my mind. The same duality exists in relationships. Two people come together. They're different, yet they exist at the same time. But their paths may split. For instance, when a partner doesn't respect the boundary you set together with your shared mind. At that point, a person has two options. Either give weight to their mind, step back and say, you cross the line we agreed on, and maybe choose to separate, or keep letting the other use them, even though they didn't respect the shared boundary. So all these dualities are infinite in essence. They exist, they're different, and they coexist. Which side we give weight to determines whether we'll be free or slaves. To sum it up, with what I've learned from you, my respected elders, I'd answer this way. What's the meaning of life? Life itself has no meaning. Life is nothing but the balance of all these dualities. There's both justice and injustice. Which side we give weight to is what makes us who we are. That's why, instead of asking what's the meaning of life, we should be asking which side should we give weight to, and how can we exist in line with the mind.
Looks like our next topic will be how we can exist in line with the mind. Or should we talk about what the mind actually is? Thanks for watching. Bye!